If you are working at like a AI provider, you have a very different set of risks than your standard company. A lot of those risks are just SaaS risks plus in their own way. So they just add more layers in that can have risks, they add more areas that can be compromised, and they just increase the risk threshold a little bit. And so I wouldn't say there's anything super specific, but it just makes things worse in general, right? And so it's more effort that you have to put into securing that tool set.
If you're looking at a threat model, is hallucinating the right way forward? This is a fascinating conversation that I had as a panel on BSidesSF with Jackie from Anthropic as well as Kane from Canva. We spoke about what's required in threat modeling AI, Gen AI systems specifically in your organization, and how people can use hallucination for their advantage. Now, there is some weight on the whole idea of using AI for good and AI within security. The two sides you spoke about, it was a bit of a debate and it was a panel, so I appreciate your patience as we went through the conversation. This is probably not a regular episode. We had shared this episode on Cloud Security Podcast as well, but this is something which we wanted to bring for the AI security podcast audience. So if you're someone who's interested in learning how companies like Canva are threat modeling Gen AI systems and what are some of the things they're finding as gaps, or the flip of it for the debate for why Gen AI should be allowed to hallucinate for security operations team, this is the episode that you've been waiting for. I hope you enjoy this conversation that I had with Jackie and Kane. I had so much fun. I can't wait to do this again at another conference panel sometime soon. I hope you enjoy this episode, and as always, if you are here for a second or third time, I would really appreciate if you can take a few seconds to drop that follow, subscribe button if you are listening to us on Apple or Spotify, or if you're watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn. Definitely means a lot if you take a second to drop that subscribe, follow button to help support the work we do over here. Thank you so much for your support. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Kane, myself, and Jackie. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.
Today's day is about slaying dragons. I've got two esteemed guests with me. Jackie, if you don't mind taking a few seconds to introduce yourself.
Sure. Happy to be here. This is like my favorite conference of the year, and like it's not my hometown, but I've lived here for long enough that it feels like home. So yeah, I'm Jackie Bowe. I've been working in security for just about 15 years now, mostly in detection and response, but I've bounced around. Currently, I am the technical lead of the threat detection engineering platform at Anthropic.
Awesome. And Kane?
Yeah, hello everyone. So I lead the enterprise security team at Canva. So a lot of that is dealing with zero trust, internal endpoints, that kind of stuff. And a big focus for me the last 2 years has been on securing AI tooling, LLMs, MCP, all of that good stuff.
Awesome. And as you can tell, there's a theme already forming that I wanted to tell you guys about. We have a bit of a debate in terms of, we have one side, which is leveraging AI. So imagine for people who will be listening to the audio, imagine a video, there's a slide up there, let's just pretend there's a slide where there's a dragon on top of my head with an AI label on it. And we've got people who've watched the How to Train a Dragon movie. So we've got Jackie, who's the How to Train a Dragon, working beside the AI dragon on defending against this big boss dragon AI. And we've got the knight shining armor, Kane on the other side, trying to defend with his shield of the fire flames from the dragon. So people who hear the audio, definitely check out the video as well, so you get to hear that on the B-side thing as well. Okay.
I feel like I have more of a wizard vibe than a knight.
Oh, wow. Okay, fair. So you have your staff? Is that what Yeah, okay, we'll go with that. So it's a wizard, guys. It's not a shield. It's a wizard with a staff. To set the scene, we've got the first question in terms of, I think I'm going to start with yourself. You had security operation experience, security operation now. In terms of, I guess a lot of people from a different background here, how has traditional security operation been done?
Yeah.
Before the leveraging AI part, if you can set the scene for people.
Of course, yeah. I think in the realm of threat detection and response, we have been locked into these monolithic tools or SIEMs, security information event managers. And most of the time, these are ones that you purchase wholesale, they're black boxes. Or if you're fortunate enough to work at a company that has custom built their own, I think most people have experience with things like Splunk or some of the other large SIEM providers. But actually, AI has come into the picture and tainted, I think, a lot of detection and response people's view on AI, because for the past at least 10 years, we've been sold this idea of AI-powered, like machine learning, detection and response, XDR, and it's all trash. It's all hot garbage.
She has had some much extra protein today.
I did, yeah.
That was her breakfast. If she's a bit feisty, that's the reason why.
Yes, we'll blame the protein. It's definitely the protein, yeah. But yeah, we've been sold this idea that, this black box model can do detection and response for you for this low premium of a high subscription cost to a vendor. And I think up until this point, defenders, I think, are rightfully like skeptical of AI because they're like, this just gives me more false positives.
Actually, that's a good point, because the moment people talk about leveraging AI into an organization, first thing that comes up is hallucination.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of things that goes into it. I'll put a pin on it for a second. I'm going to come back to Kane. Since you've been securing the wizard of, what are some of the risks that are being introduced by AI systems in organizations that come to top of mind for you?
Yeah, like I feel like it depends on what angle you're looking at. If you are working at like a AI provider, you have a very different set of risks than your standard company. A lot of those risks are just SaaS risks plus in their own way. So they just add more layers in that can have risks. They add more areas that can be compromised, and they just increase the risk threshold a little bit. And so I wouldn't say there's anything super specific, but it just makes things worse in general. And so it's more effort that you have to put into securing that tool set.
And I guess talking about securing and detection response, they go hand in hand, where people are trying to figure out, hey, to what you were saying earlier, whether it's Splunk or any other theme, all of us are familiar with false positives being like, a lot of level one just spends a lot of time just triaging incidents for, is this even a false positive? I just call DEFCON 1 on this. Yeah. So how can an organization leverage AI, tame that dragon for detection response?
Yeah, that is a great question. It's also, can I pump up my talk tomorrow?
For sure.
Okay.
I mean, I was going to say, please do. Let's go ahead and talk, but we need to pump up both your talks.
Yeah, tomorrow I'll be presenting with my colleague Peter about some tools that we built with actually using Claude, which is Anthropic's LLM, Claude code to build tools. And then we actually do a lot of the investigation and triage using Claude. And so I think for me, the difference in right now leveraging AI is instead of a black box of like alerts go in and something gets spit out and you have no idea how it got there, especially with these models that have extended thinking, you can actually see what prompts go in, you can tweak those prompts, and with the outputs, you actually have more control over seeing what's happening. You can also leverage things like best of n, so you can have a model with the same prompt triage a detection n number of times, and then out of that choose the best response. So I think the power for individual teams to leverage like generative LLMs to do this work, there's just so much more visibility, and it's no longer that black box of why am I getting this response?
But how do you balance hallucination then? Because to your point, the moment you got, and maybe it's my bias, and I don't know if anyone else has this, because we've been hearing about hallucination being like the number one thing people talk about. Oh, yeah, you should use AI, but be careful, there'll be hallucination.
Yeah.
So how do you balance that?
Yeah. So we'll talk about this a little bit tomorrow too, but hallucinations are basically the model being super helpful and coming up with convincing sounding answers. And in some cases, we actually want to encourage this. We don't want to encourage the model to make up events that have happened, but we actually want the model to break out of like playbook style or rigid human thinking and have creativity, because any of us who are incident responders or who work in any open-ended investigation or even like fixing bugs know that most of the times our most like incredible ideas come when we're doing things creatively or not the same way that we did before. So actually encouraging models to think for themselves and hallucinate maybe investigative actions that you wouldn't have thought of is actually good, but you want to box them in a little bit, right? You don't want them to come up with, oh, here are all these like network logs, and they just are completely not true.
Wait, so we want models to hallucinate?
Yeah, a bit within boundaries. Why let your models have a good time too?
Fair. Wait, how do you even, I'm like, wait, so we let them hallucinate and all these bugs. But to your point, I agree. It might bring up some creative things that you may not have thought of. But I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
In terms of building threat model, because Kane's going to talk straight after this, by the way, if you want to join in. How do you even build a threat model for something like an AI system? Or where do you even start? Because I can imagine doing a threat model for an AI system is not the same as, I'm sure there's a few AppSec people listening or watching this as well. It's almost, hey, what stride model should I use, or whatever other thing. How do you even start doing threat modeling for an AI system that you let hallucinate?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And again, spoiler, that's a lot of what my talk goes into after this. So if you're interested, feel free to come along. But the high level is that I like to focus on sort of two areas. Like whatever model you use is fine. I like to think of it as using access at the beginning. So like, how are you interacting with them? What are desktops, phones, like where are you accessing them from? Yeah. And then on the other end, what integrations do you have? So what is your AI talking to? Is it talking to like your Jira servers or your Salesforce or whatever? And those two things are the things that introduce the most risk, in my opinion, because that's increasing the surface area of the things that can go wrong. And this gets even worse when you start connecting it to like customer data stores and doing public customer support, because then it's not your employees, it's like an unknown third party that can potentially do weird things.
Could you expand on the whole authorization? Because now seems like you can't spend a day on the internet without talking about MCP and A2A and whatever else comes with it. How does that play a role in your threat model and the authentication authorization part?
Yeah, it's interesting because especially with MCP, they've got a spec for authorization in the model, which a lot of people have had problems with, let's say. And there's definitely a few blog posts on that are worth reading. But there are ways you can encapsulate it as well, right? There's a bunch of vendors. I think Cloudflare did one a few weeks ago. I think Merch has one now where you can host them like on a public server. So it's not like a thing running on your workstation anymore. It is like a public thing where all of your employees are accessing it. And rather than having thousands and thousands of agents across all your laptops, you just have this one server that goes and connects to everything, which from a security point of view, I prefer to threat model one thing rather than 1,000 different versions of open source code that people are running.
Just like on MCP servers, I think I totally agree with having an open standard is a great first step. And then having the first pass at authorization or identity for agents and for MCP servers. And I think I really love what I'm seeing like coming out of Cloudflare, and like it encourages the maturation of this technology, especially by security practitioners, so we can actually get the standard that is the most secure.
And you've got to start somewhere. That's the thing at the end of the day. And even taking this beyond into using it, what we found is that we can build sort of triage bots using us to then threat model our AI tools. And so building up like a corpus of info that you can ingest in and then have the AI do the triage rather than you do it yourself.
Yes.
Especially since every tool is an AI tool now. I don't want to have to do this hundreds of times to every vendor I use.
The next gen AI agent that's out there everywhere. Feels like everything has a next gen AI agent these days. But that's an interesting point about building capability as well. So I guess in your talk, and we've been talking about detection response for infrastructure that is potentially using AI systems or running AI systems in your case.
Yeah.
How do you even, where do you start? And especially if you already have a team, like many of us may already have a security operations team. We would like to do threat detection, but sometimes you don't have the resources or the time.
Yeah. So I think one of the most important things that we found is a base technical stack that really allows integration with these tooling. And it basically is set up your technical stack so it is engineering forward, because models you can think of as software engineers. You give them tools to use, and their efficacy is how open your stack is. So are you using common programming languages? Are you using either open source tools or well-documented tools? Are you using tools that have very good APIs? Because when you think about giving a model the ability to do work on your behalf, you actually need to give it hands or access to things, which, is the MCP servers. It is tools. And so I think a good place to start if you're starting from square one, which honestly is, I think a lot of us dream about coming into a company and being like, oh, I can just build this from scratch rather than here's the legacy sim. Good luck. But if you are in that position, I think really focusing on tooling that is open, that has very well documented standards. If you can use a sim that uses an open detection standard like Sigma rules, better than if you're using a sim that has a proprietary, not well-known format. And for us, we built most of our tooling using Claude Code, which is a coding agent that is really a collaborator. So we use Claude in how we do triage and investigations, but we also use Claude to build our Terraform and our infrastructure. And I
don't know about you, but I personally fall in the camp of security people who don't code. So I feel a bit nervous, and
You want to go outside?
I feel like I heard about vibe coding. I've been hearing a lot about vibe coding the entire day.
I vibe code all day.
Yeah, which is why I'm it makes me nervous that, does that mean that all those ideas that I've had before that I wish I was a programmer?
Yes, exactly.
So is that how easy it is, even as a security person?
Yes. Okay, so I will say some of the best security people are software engineers or were software engineers, because in order to understand how to circumvent a system, understanding how the system works is great. But I will say that what I have seen with coding tools, especially like Claude Code, and there's tons out there, there's a Copilot, Cursor, Windsurf, these have lowered the barrier to entry from ideation to prototyping in a way that makes it so if you have these ideas, you can actually go and create a prototype relatively quickly. And we could talk about, is this a good thing or a bad thing? I think it's a good thing. I'm on team build more shit.
Kane, how do we threat model this one?
It depends, right? And that's the typical security engineer answer right there.
Consultant answer.
I can drop the mic and leave now. So I think people are going to use it whether we want them to or not at the end of the day. And I think you've got to secure it in place the best you can. And so at the moment, a lot of that is through education because there's not a lot of tooling out today, right? That kind of helps this. And there's things like YOLO mode, right? Where you can just ask Cursor to go do your thing.
What are you trying to say?
And then you cross your fingers and hope for the best. And you add, please don't make vulnerabilities, Claude, please, at the end. And that's how you secure it. But I do think there are some things you can do where, like I said, if you're connecting to sensitive integrations, that's where you want to put your effort. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to secure or threat model all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And so really just focusing down on like, where is the risk? What data is it ingesting? That's fine. If you're connecting it to, or your log sources, maybe it's fine if it's just telemetry, right? In that case, but maybe if you're connecting it to like your customer RDSs or something, then you're like, oh, no, I need to put a bit more effort into securing this.
I guess to your point, it's focusing on data identity access rather than, hey, you can wipe code versus the AI agent can do its own thing, MCP, whatever else that comes after.
Yeah, exactly. And you might have some guidance on use our provided MCP servers. Don't go out to the internet and just download random ones. It's a lot of typical stuff in package management, really, that is proving over time, like it's getting there.
Talking about MCPs for detection as well, because I think Kane raised an interesting point about using the right kind of logs, which is 101 for instant response detection, all of that. Obviously, on the Cloud Security podcast, people have spent years trying to learn AWS, Azure, cloud, logging, all of that. Now, with the AI systems being attached to their existing legacy systems as well, some of them obviously may have started today building applications, AI from day one, or AI native, if you want to call that. But for people who are trying to incorporate detection response in legacy systems which are running on cloud, how does Claude fit into like a cloud environment?
Yeah, I don't think you can separate cloud from most of the modern uses of AI because in Claude's case, you can run Claude on Bedrock, which is AWS, or you can run it on Vertex, which is GCP. And so you can access the models that way. You can access the API. We also have a first-party API, but most of what we build is in the cloud. So it's either in GCP or AWS. And I think one of the great things you mentioned, kind of like legacy or like people learning AWS, is when I'm writing a detection signature, say for some random thing in AWS, because AWS and GCP come out with new services all the time, and you're like, what does this log look like? I can just ask Claude, okay, what are the fields that I should look for? Claude's like, here they are. And then I can prototype a detection signature, especially doing detection engineering. I can throw up a PR and have a detection written like 5-10 minutes.
Wow. So the entire life cycle from we have a new service to we now have a preventative detection control. And wait, so how do you balance between when to retire the controller? There is a whole question about, yes, you built one, someone's watering the plant, someone's making sure it grows into this big tree, but now it's time to hopefully not chop down a real tree, but in this context, like retire a detection.
Yeah, I would say like the detection life cycle is it's a great question because it's like very nuanced and it's very different everywhere you go. And a lot of people have different ideas, but the way that I like to break it down is you have both like alerting detections, which are things that you immediately need a human to look at, like it needs human intervention. And then you should have a ton of like lower confidence signals. And one of the best things about using AI is I can spin up like N number of Claude agents who can just look over all of my non-alerting detections and then surface things that are interesting. And one of the things we actually were surprised by is, if people have used Claude has a bit of a personality. And I was running Claude over a bunch of detections that we had. And Claude wrote this report for me that was like, I'm seeing this alert happen a lot of times, and I worry about the security posture of a program that is still having this as a firing detection. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like,
are you really working? What are you doing?
Yeah, I was like, we're just testing now, Claude, but yeah.
Imagine sends an email to HR. I've mentioned to Jackie 5 times.
Yeah.
She's not looking at this.
Why isn't she turning this detection? Yeah.
So to your point, you're able to, so are you using MCP connectivity to AWS and in terms of like foundational pillars.
Yeah,
To
so-
what Kane was talking about as well. I'm curious.
Yeah. So MCP, you can think of MCP as like it's an open standard for writing these connectors that you can provide to AI agents. But really, like under the hood, everything is, you can break it down to tool use. So tool use is the ability to give a model actions that it wouldn't normally do or to coax it down a path. And so for us, we use like a custom tool that we wrote. We could also use an MCP server, but we just wrote a tool that does querying into our data lakes, or Claude wrote a tool that queries our data lakes.
I was going to ask you a question if that's okay.
Yeah.
How much of your stuff is custom to you, like a Snowflake
Yeah.
stuff, versus how much is possible for wider audience to use?
Great question. Yeah. So what we're building is sim agnostic-ish. So if you use
What?
yeah, if you use a sim that treats how it works as a proprietary secret, I'm sorry. But I would say this is the tooling that we're using. None of this is Anthropic secret sauce. Like nothing is things that are only available to us. We're using models that are currently out. And everything we're building is in cloud and could be, we're using like Postgres databases, data lakes, things that you can have in either GCP, AWS, or Azure. Yeah.
Because obviously we've got two camps here for leveraging AI and securing AI as well. I'm curious in terms of now that we know how to build, we can wipe code, let it hallucinate,
Yeah.
and with interesting solutions, and hopefully we can figure out a way not to talk to a developer and still be able to figure out what the hell they are doing. In terms of, I guess my question is, in the existing market that we're in, with security, AI being this big unknown kind of on the side, and we're able to leverage something like Claude to our own detection, what's the starting point for someone to enter into this? To Kane's point,
Yeah.
are we just able to use leveraging existing cloud logs, existing application logs, putting into a data lake to what you're saying, and just go hallucinate on it and hopefully come back?
I feel like we're stuck on the
I
hallucinations.
was just like, felt really right to say that. What else do you find here? But is that kind of where you go with that?
Basically, we found that once you have the logs, which is like the first thing that you need to do, then giving Claude access and tools to both like query your logs and also do some processing. Like we have some tools that we've created that write standardized reports based on a detection signature. And there's like a lot of ways that you can experiment and create different tools. I think one of the most exciting things for us is the ability to rapidly prototype and run experiments. So we can try different strategies of triage. We can try different modalities, and we can have an idea of, okay, I want to have 1,000 Claude agents go and look over every log versus I want only to surface, like I want it only to look at the alerting detections and then to give me like really clear reports. It's just, it's very exciting because the ability to just have an idea, prototype, go out and test, and then get results. I've never had this kind of power before.
You sound like a wizard already, but my wizard over here, on the other hand, I was going to say, now I love the passion and energy Jackie has about how AI is amazing. Without giving up too much about your talk, what can you share about some of the things you found about doing threat modeling across AI systems, both the SaaS ones and the in-house ones? If you could share that as well. Because I want to balance the picture as well. As much as I'm excited about AI and we can leverage it to do amazing things, curious to know about what you had found in the whole threat modeling that you did.
Yeah, what I find is that, so my talk is about enterprise search. So if you've used Glean, Atlassian Rovo, the Slack has one, every vendor has one now, basically. And so it was looking at some of those tools and like what some of the problems are. And what you find is that when you are doing these things, there's like limitations. And so the biggest limitation is, of course, authorization. And so they've had to build, like all the vendors have to build on top of the already existing SaaS APIs, right?
Yeah.
But those SaaS APIs aren't always good. And then the layer on top of it isn't always good. And so what happens is when you're building auth on top of auth, bad things usually happen. And so I find the issues are not like, you'll read about things like prompt injection and you'll realize this is the worst thing possible and we need to look at it. But really it only matters if you're building sort of public facing platforms, right?
Yeah.
The bigger risk with a lot of this stuff is who has access to what,
Yeah.
how you're getting like thousands of service accounts now to connect all of this stuff together. And so again, it's a lot of the existing stuff that just gets amped up to 11 in that regard.
Because to your point with the threat modeling space, traditionally we have looked at, what threats am I looking out for? A lot of the conversation around threat modeling AI systems is going with, it's a dynamic system. I don't know what Kane would say next.
Yeah.
Let's put it in the chatbot or wherever. But what you're saying also is that what's the true reality of internals of this, or I guess inside an organization, There's a lot of SaaS, which is using AI. I'm just going to throw a few words. Salesforce has an AI, Atlassian has an AI, Canva has an AI. Everyone has a customer-facing AI, and that's obviously being used by other customers on the other side. So you being on the other side of this, where you're obviously part of the consuming sales space yourself, you have your own SaaS AIs that you're looking at, and the Glean and everything else you mentioned as well. What's missing in the current approach for threat modeling? Or is it the same way to approach AI systems as well? In terms of, because a lot of people would be thinking, am I learning something new here completely?
Yeah.
Or am I able to just leverage what I know?
There's a few new bugs and things like that. There's things like, like YOLO mode and stuff like that, which is all like brand new. But again, like I think if you threat modeled a lot of SaaS tools in the past, you'll pick this up pretty quickly. I do think that probably what we'll see will be interesting. Like MCP at the moment is like a layer for our LLMs that kind of sits in front of our already existing APIs.
Yeah.
I do wonder how long it will be until we just don't need like those original APIs and we just LLM it. And at that point, that's much more scary because MCP is basically taking wide swathing prompts that I'm putting in and it's turning it into specific API actions that I can usually see. And so when I can't see those things in the future, that will be really interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
We can audit them as well. Is that what you?
Yeah, like the thing that Kane is getting at, and from like the like incident response and investigation side, is like we need to keep logs of what is happening, because I'm very excited about, look at how much I can do, look how much like my work is amplified by using LLMs, but you take that for every person at a company and even people who maybe have not historically interacted with like infrastructure or technical systems, but they're able to now. And we still are having this like really beginning forming idea of what is identity when it comes to like agentic workflows. And so the ability to trace back like where actions are coming from, I think is going to be more and more critical, especially for me, if I'm looking at an incident of like, why did this server go down? And it's, oh, this API call that came from like Bedrock, it came from like an AI, that doesn't actually help me. I need to know where it actually came from. And so like tracing actions, I think is critical.
Are you able to use AI for those, like going into the rabbit holes as well?
I would say AI is pretty good at going into rabbit holes, but yeah, I think you need to guide it. Yeah.
It's been pretty classic as well that security teams don't really scale with engineering departments generally.
Yes.
And so like, I feel like we have to, even if you do not want to, even if you are like one of the doomers who is, no, I will do everything manually. I feel like
learn the hard way.
If your engineers are doing it, then like you are going to fall further and further behind.
I think that's such a good point. And like, I think the position I have is we are not going to be able to keep up as defenders if we are not willing to use this technology. I think if we are only on the side of, oh, MCP servers are vulnerable, or this technology is, let's only talk about prompt injection, which is something like I feel this community sometimes gets stuck a little bit in, is like the hacking or the breaking. We won't be able to scale with offensive capabilities and offensive technologies if we are just waiting and blocking ourselves on, we'll wait until it's more secure. We'll wait until it's better.
Here we are 16 years later, still talking about cloud adoption. So some things would always be slow, I imagine. I think I love both the perspectives, but I also want people to walk away with a starting point for, they heard how passionate you are about Claude code, and people should definitely go and try that. Even if you've never coded before, open up a Visual Code or whatever your favorite editor is. What's a good starting point for someone who's basically inspired after hearing this to start leveraging AI?
Yeah, I feel like trying out some of the coding assistants, there's a ton of resources out there. I feel like Anthropic's documentation is pretty great. No bias, completely. Yeah, I'm completely not biased at all. And there's a lot of YouTube videos and things to talk you through. And if you have an idea on something that you would have liked to build, prototype it yourself, stand up your own like AWS or GCP account. And I don't recommend you do this on like your corporate, like on your production system.
It is live stream, so I'm glad you mentioned it.
But yeah, in a sandbox environment, or if where you work provides like nice sandboxing so you can have a playground. But I would say definitely don't be afraid just to try things.
So is there I don't know, like a S3 bucket going to internet or whatever? Is there a thread that comes to mind that's probably the easiest one to start with as well, with this kind of a vibe coding?
So I think one interesting thing is like just throwing logs at an LLM and asking it to come up with patterns, or if you have an idea about a detection signature. But also if you're like, I want to create a system to collect logs, or one of the interesting ones for me is I want to run some kind of analysis over a bunch of files and setting up like infrastructure and systems to do that. I found Claude Code to be really helpful with that.
Yeah. And how do you scale something like that? Because there's one thing making one.
Yes. Yeah.
And now you're like, okay, now that I do this across 300 plus AWS accounts or GCP accounts.
I think so. What we start with is an idea, and then we talk to Claude, and then we come up with a design doc. And then in a good design doc, you have components about scalability. And I found it's really collaborative to, like, with my colleagues, we'll come up with these design docs, we'll iterate on them, then we'll start broad and then move into the specificity of an actual technical deployment. And then we'll go into the actual vibe coding with Claude, where we take the design doc in like a markdown format, drop it into a repo, and then let Claude cook. Yeah. With guidance.
We're hallucinating, we're cooking. Yes. I don't know. We should need to update the vocabulary a bit. Okay, on the same flip side for threat modeling as well, what's a good starting point for AppSec folks or people who've been on the other side? Yeah. And how can they scale that as well?
Yeah, here's like my kind of opposite take, I guess, which is if you are like a cloud security engineer and you're building stuff, you should still learn to code manually and connect APIs and do your day-to-day manually so that you really understand that. Because if you use vibe coding to do that, you're stealing that learning away from yourself. However, say you need to build a UI and like you're not a front-end developer, like you just need something to show.
Say you need to make a button.
Yeah. Then go nuts. Do that, vibe code that. And I feel like that way you will gain knowledge in your domain and you will keep that. And so specifically with something like threat modeling, do loads of it. Build up a big piece of like knowledge base when it comes to that stuff. Keep doing it so that you're good at it, and then you can tell what the AI is good and bad at in that regards. And that way you can use it as a triage step and say, look, this one's high risk. It's done half the work for me, but here's a bunch of stuff I still need to do. And I needed to do the learning first to do that.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Yeah.
Also, I've got a couple more questions coming towards the tail end of the episode as well. I was going to say, if this is a fun question, we've been very serious so far. Yeah. We're totally not having fun at all. So I've got some fun questions to just lighten up the mood a bit. No AI was involved with this. I didn't let them hallucinate. First question was, or is, if AI could protect one thing in your life besides your passwords, what would you want it to guard?
So my answer, I think Kane might have feelings about this too, is I would want something to protect my dog. I have a Pomeranian and sometimes I can't be home with her. So I would like something that just...
Like a shield, walks around with it.
Yeah, and make sure she's okay and that she has enrichment time. Yeah.
Plays with her as well. When she's bored. Fair.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Well, you can.
I can't steal that one. I have a little 8-week-old Pomeranian.
Oh, okay.
So here's a funny story, right? My friend lives in rural Australia. And he has like a big like homestead, right? And he has these fat wombats that come and steal his strawberries every night. And so he's shown me videos of them. So I think we need to make a startup for like wombat detection and response or something.
For all the non-Australians, wombats are like giant rats or raccoons, for lack of a better word. But if people have not seen them, they're just everywhere in Australia. Okay, good, great answer. I've got the second question. What's one totally ridiculous thing you think AI should have security for? I think I would love for it to protect my crypto wallet, but what's a ridiculous thing?
Oh, man. I'm thinking of, I'm just going to say it. I have no filter at this point. Like I talk to AI a lot as like a therapist or like for interpersonal things. And so I would like protection for like when I'm talking to LLMs about emotions or so they're, to keep that private.
To remind you that, hey, everything you put here is not like you may hear answers which I may be hallucinating. Yeah, so don't take my advice seriously about your life choices. Fair. What about you, Kane?
It's really hard to follow with a wombat answer. I feel like that is a pretty dumb one by itself. So
fair. Okay, so that's the most ridiculous thing. Fair.
I think that's pretty ridiculous.
I would think. Oh, wait. So then the next question is: if your AI could be your spirit animal that would walk around with you. Don't say wombat now.
Should we answer at the same time?
Oh, okay. So if people are ready for it, the question here is, if AI security could be your sidekick, what kind of animal form it should take? Which animal would you pick and why?
Yeah.
So that's just same. I'll let you come to the mic as well.
1, 2, 3. Pomeranian.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say a different one. Golden doodles. I'm like, another in there. Someone needs to stand up for the golden doodles out there.
Chicken nugget.
But wait, why Pomeranian? Why your sidekick needs to be your best friend in life?
Yeah, I just think since I have a Pomeranian and she's already my sidekick, that I would, yeah.
This is like dogs are best friend. At this point in time, we should just end the show at this point.
Yeah, we're actually going to do a slideshow of our dogs now.
We've got airdrop going on here, so she'll come with those dog shows off. But that was the episode that we wanted to record. Thank you so much for everyone who joined us and at the overflow rooms as well. Thank you for engaging us in the conversation. Hopefully, I don't know if we have been able to sway you on the and side of security, where you're still testing the ground or happy to test AI behind the passionate Jackie that we have here, or still threat modeling your way with the wizard Kane that we have. Hopefully you get to slay some dragons, AI dragons, for the rest of the conference as well. But thank you so much for joining us and being part of the podcast live as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, folks. That was a great conversation.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening and watching this episode of AI Cybersecurity Podcast. If you want to hear more episodes like these or watch them, you can definitely find them on our YouTube for AI Cybersecurity Podcast, or also on our website, www.aicybersecuritypodcast.com. And if you are interested in Cloud, which is also a sister podcast called Cloud Security Podcast, where on a weekly basis we talk to cloud security practitioners, leaders who are trying to solve different clients' cloud security challenges at scale across the 3 most popular cloud provider. You can find more information about Cloud Security Podcast on www.cloudsecuritypodcast.tv. Thank you again for supporting us. See you next time. Peace.